私は3650日間以上人間関係を絶っていました。
One of the biggest social problems in Japan is that about 1 million people, mostly men, have fully withdrawn from society.
It's known as HIKIKOMORI.
What's up, guys? So this request is actually 2 months old, so hopefully the person that requested this still has interest in the video that I'm gonna make about it. Cause you know, I went on my long hiatus, but I'm back.
Shady's back.
Hopefully. So first of all, I want to do away with this whole idea that Japan, all in all, is just a super friendly country.
You see, these are very friendly Japanese people. Come to Japan, man, come! It's okay, it's expensive, but it's okay!
Granted, Japan is not a super unfriendly country. But I'd say it's pretty much just a regular country when it comes to how friendly people are.
What? Yeah, I'm sorry about that. If I could just get that wallet right there.
Okay, sure thing. Wait a minute. Why should I?
I have this gun, so...
Well, look at you. Certainly got this all planned out, eh? Here you go.
What people misconstrue is the fact that people are very polite. And politeness can oftentimes be misconstrued with being super friendly. And I just wanted to say that because of a little comment conversation that occurred on the video that this video was requested on. So, moving along. As an example of this, the first time I went to the emergency room because of a panic attack, it wasn't Japanese people that helped me get to the emergency room. It was actually a Westerner that spoke fluent Japanese that called the ambulance, plus my friends from my college that helped me get to the emergency room. It was the Japanese people that formed a crowd around me and just stared at me. That's not to say that, you know, I don't love Japanese people, I don't love Japan. I'm just trying to clear that up. And trust me, a lot of Japanese people, or at least most of the Japanese people I'm friends with, will agree with me. And this is more to go along with the theme of, you know, mental health in Japan, which is, now this is very frustrating. Every time I go to the emergency room, because every time I've gone, it's been because my heart is racing. And it's always because of anxiety, but I always end up spending about 30 minutes filling out paperwork and, you know, talking about my past medical history and all this other stuff, instead of, you know, having them look at my heart and making sure everything is okay, because they don't know. Just because I look like I'm in shape, or at least decent shape, and I don't have obvious medical issues doesn't mean I'm not, you know, there's not something happening. So it's very frustrating. In fact, the last time I went to the emergency room, I was actually almost turned away because I ended up coming back after being told that there was nothing wrong with my brain or my heart, because I woke up in a panic. I was shaking, I was cold, I didn't know what was going on. My first thought was, you know, it might be hyperthyroidism, or, you know, maybe I am developing diabetes. I wasn't sure.
Diabetes.
But they finally did do the blood work. So basically what I'm saying is, below the surface, Japan is just a normal country. Now, as far as Japan specifically treats mental illness, what has struck me as interesting about Japanese as compared to Western psychiatrists and psychologists, they'll focus on the terms depression and anxiety without looking much deeper into the actual underlying disorders. Granted, this is a general trend that is happening in psychology, as I was told by my counselor, is it's becoming much more personality based instead of symptom based, so that might be part of it. But I felt on an intuitive level that there was much less interest on understanding my underlying symptoms than just, you know, fixing the surface issues so that I could function normally. A lot of this could have to do with, you know, a lot less egocentricity in, you know, Asian countries in general, you know, and I'm talking about Japan, so in Japan. For example, you would more likely hear a person say, I have bipolar disorder, instead of I am bipolar. And that is a major difference between Japan and Western countries. And, you know, I'm American, obviously, from the extremely American accent. We tend to identify ourselves by our disorders, and I've definitely been guilty of that. Now, as a prelude to the rest of the video, being autistic in Japan is actually pretty easy, because
発達障害という障害を持ってまして、なかなか特に会社ですとか
Japan is surprisingly conducive to autism and supportive of the condition in a sense, because, you know, with the gaming culture and, you know, the other aspects of the culture that I'm going to get into. And it makes sense because Japan, from what I read, has the highest rate of autism in the world. So it makes sense that being autistic in Japan and wouldn't be that difficult. Now, to move beyond myself and give this video more value than just my own personal grievances, I'm going to delve into two concepts that can be used to understand a large amount of the attitudes that Japan has about mental health. Now, from what I've come to understand and what has been corroborated by, you know, a lot of my Japanese friends, as well as research that I've conducted, mental health and mental illness in Japan is largely understood in sociological terms, rather than individual terms. A lot of this goes back into Japan being a very homogenous country, and fitting outside of the norm has never been a very good thing. Two concepts that can be used to illustrate this point are hikikomori and SHINKEISHITSU.
見せたくなかった。だからその一人で部屋にこもって勉強していた。そしたらそれがまあ10年間ぐらいトータルでなるんです。
Now, hikikomori. Now, oftentimes, instead of a person explaining that they are either autistic or have a personality disorder which caused them to have a nervous breakdown and not be able to function in society, people will say that they are hikikomori. Now, according to the Japanese Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare, hikikomori is a condition in which individuals isolate themselves from society in their homes for a period exceeding 6 months. The psychiatrist Tamaki Saito defines hikikomori as a state that has become a problem by the late 20s that involves cooping oneself up in one's own home and not participating in society for 6 months or longer, but does not seem to have another psychological problem as its principal source. More recently, researchers have developed more specific criteria to more accurately identify hikikomori. During diagnostic interviews, trained clinicians evaluate for 1. Spending most of the day and nearly every day confined at home. 2. Marked by persistent avoidance of social situations. 3. Social withdrawal symptoms causing significant functional impairment. 4. Duration of at least 6 months. 5. No apparent physical pathology to account for the social withdrawal symptoms.
talking about God said let there be light.
I'm not sure if I read out all the numbers because I wasn't paying attention, but that should have been 5 different symptoms. The psychiatrist Alan Teo, well, I'm going to assume they're Japanese, so it should be Teo, first characterized hikikomori in Japan as modern-day hermits. While the literary and communications scholar Flavio Rizzo similarly described hikikomori as postmodern hermit, whose solitude stems from ancestral desires for solitude and withdrawal. While the degree of the phenomenon varies on an individual basis, in the most extreme cases, people remain in isolation for years and even decades. In a large way, it is viewed as a Japanese person's inability to conform to Japanese standards of hone and tatamai. It's interesting to me as an autistic adult because when I was a teenager, I would have likely been understood as a hikikomori, or at least would have been allowed to be that way, because I had no desire to, really leave my room and to really make friends, at least relatively speaking. Yet now, from a Western perspective, my behavior is understood as, being on the autism spectrum, and then later on is falling under borderline personality disorder. When it gets really interesting when you look at it from a true clinical psychology point of view. Hikikomori is similar to the social withdrawal that you see with people with autism spectrum disorders. A group of disorders, it all falls under autism spectrum disorder now, but used to include Asperger's syndrome, PDD-NOS, and classic autism. This has led some psychiatrists to suggest that hikikomori sufferers may be affected by autism spectrum disorders and other disorders that affect social integration. But their disorders are altered from the standard Western presentation of the symptoms because of social and culture pressures that are unique to Japan. Now, in a study conducted by Suwa and Hara in 2007, they discovered that 5 out of 27 cases of hikikomori had a high-functioning pervasive developmental disorder, and 12 more had another disorder or mental disease. Specifically, 6 cases of personality disorders, 3 cases of obsessive compulsive disorder, 2 cases of depression, and 1 case of slight mental retardation. The researchers used vignette to illustrate the difference between primary hikikomori without any obvious mental disorder and hikikomori with HPDD or other disorder. Furthermore, 10 out of 27 had primary hikikomori.
居場所に来れてその途中にあるような人たちですね。
Now that I've explained hikikomori to a better extent, I want to focus on the next concept, which is shinkeishitsu.
Social phobia focuses on the fear of embarrassment in front of others, while the Japanese phobia focuses on being afraid of embarrassing others by being in their presence.
Now, this is actually a very old-fashioned term, yet acts as a very good example of a sociological viewpoint of a mental issue that is specific to Japan. I've actually used this term to explain to my Japanese friends that I have an anxiety disorder. Now, shinkeishitsu is a Japanese word that essentially means nervousness, but was once seen as a culture-bound syndrome, seen in Japan that features obsessions, perfectionism, ambivalence, social withdrawal, and hypochondria. It is also seen in China. Shoma Morita thought it to be an innate problem with Japan. Now, you can't mention shinkeishitsu without mentioning Morita therapy, because they go hand in hand. Morita therapy offered a philosophical approach that moved clients to follow nature and act according to the laws of emotion that Morita described. In this way, one can live according to his or her own essential nature. Morita described his own therapy as follows. Although I tried various therapies, including hypnosis for patients with anxiety disorders, my treatment involves 4 stages. 1. Isolation rest therapy. 2. Light occupation therapy. 3. Heavy occupational therapy. And 4. Complicated activity therapy in preparation for actual life. Morita therapy was developed to deal with shinkeishitsu. Now, shinkeishitsu is considered an outdated term that encompassed a large amount of different anxiety disorders. The goal of Morita therapy was not to rid the patient of shinkeishitsu, but to lessen the damaging effects. So instead of focusing on the issues as an individual diagnosis, they were more in line with realigning the person with the norm. A number of studies have investigated the association between personality and job stress. And the traditional Japanese personality shinkeishitsu, which also relates to the Japanese-bound syndrome Taijin Kyofu Sho, has become outdated even in modern Japanese psychiatry. What is most fascinating about shinkeishitsu, however, is how complex and well-formulated the diagnosis was in the past. As I always state, I am studying psychology, but I am by no means an expert. But for me, this almost sounds more like the description of a personality disorder, which strongly relates my belief that a lot of mental health in Japan is viewed in sociological terms. The word shinkeishitsu is still a very common word, but its meaning only represents nervousness or hysteria. The original meaning of the word Morita shinkeishitsu is now used as a local diagnosis for Morita therapists, and it remains difficult for people outside of this group to truly understand what Morita shinkeishitsu truly is. Nevertheless, shinkeishitsu traits can still be found in Japanese workers, as well as in other healthy people. Now, this is probably going to be one of the longest videos I made, and I'm not sure how much of this I'm going to cut out because I feel like I kind of rambled at a lot of parts. But I had a lot of information to put out, so hopefully this is useful to some people, and I'm sure this answered the original question that was simply, what is it like to be autistic in Japan? But you know, I like to explain things thoroughly, as thoroughly as I can, because I used to be really bad about not explaining things thoroughly enough. So that's it for this video. So as always, if you like my video, subscribe. If you like my music, buy it. And if you hate me, tell everybody. Out.
Pizza boy. Nizza. Pizza boy Nizza.